The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
So let's get straight to it. Our lead headline has to be about BlockFi. The first day of the bankruptcy hearing began yesterday, and guess who was listening in? CoinDesk's Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor, Nick Day, who is also the editor of CoinDesk's State of Crypto newsletter. Great to have you on, Nick, as always. Good morning.
Good morning.
So yeah, what happened yesterday? How dramatic did it get?
Yeah, I mean, it was your, I would say, far more typical first day bankruptcy hearing than what we saw last week when FTX had its own bankruptcy hearing. Attorneys for BlockFi went through, kind of a rough history of crypto, a rough history of BlockFi, the company, and most importantly, a quick history of the last 6 months or so leading up to BlockFi's filing for bankruptcy earlier this week. The key things that, I think we learned: one, BlockFi confirmed that it did have some assets on FTX that are currently frozen, about $355 million worth of assets. So this doesn't seem to be the entirety of its assets, which is what people were speculating might have happened, but it's still not an insignificant amount. Worse than that, nearly double that, around $670 million worth of crypto, or worth of assets rather, have been loaned by FTX to Alameda Research, which is FTX's sister company. BlockFi loaned it. And, BlockFi said yesterday that Alameda has defaulted on this loan. So basically, BlockFi is saying that it has something close to $1 billion of exposure to FTX and Alameda, which it's currently, lacking. Beyond that, the company believes that it can restructure, it can continue operations. It does anticipate laying off around 2/3 of its workforce around the world, which it thinks will save it around $34 million a year. But, assuming it gets through the process and gets through this restructuring, they painted a pretty optimistic picture of being able to, continue operations at some point.
And what were the observations of the court?
This is, I think, the first crypto bankruptcy specifically, that we're seeing in this particular court. This is in New Jersey. Some of the other ones we're seeing have been in New York and in Delaware. So, the judge had a couple of questions, but mostly, we don't have a clear sense of, if anything is out of the ordinary yet. The judge approved motions to continue, paying vendors and paying utilities. Beyond that, I think we're gonna have to wait and see. Once again, one of the more interesting questions, and this is something that's now come up at least 4 times in the Voyager bankruptcy, in the Celsius bankruptcy, and last week in the FTX bankruptcy, is the question of whether or not to release the names of the creditors of the bankrupt company, in this case BlockFi. This has, again, come up repeatedly, and once again, at least for now, the judge has ruled that BlockFi does not have to reveal the names and addresses of the creditors that had their money on BlockFi. It's a similar decision that we've seen on some of the other bankruptcy cases, but once again, we're finding, and this is like a not a uniquely crypto problem, but we're finding that bankruptcy law, at least right now, doesn't have anything specific to address the fact that a lot of people put their names and addresses when they're KYCing on crypto exchanges. And these crypto exchanges have, been going bankrupt, I would say, a lot more often than we would expect this year.
Well, at least we know one of the creditors in this case is the SEC. But did anybody bring up exactly what's the story with the Robinhood shares that were posted or were supposed to be posted as collateral? Do we know what's going on with that? FTX was going to buy BlockFi, and a bunch of shares of Robinhood were going to be used as collateral. Was that brought up?
It wasn't really brought up in any detail. So really what seems to happen is that, obviously FTX was in a rough state earlier this month. And this is, partly speculation, partly just based on the court filings we've seen. It looks like what happened is now former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried pledged the Robinhood shares as collateral because, again, Alameda had borrowed 670 something million from BlockFi, and BlockFi was going to collect or announce that default. if they didn't have any kind of reassurance. Alameda defaulted anyway, and Robinhood shares are the collateral. BlockFi is now suing to try and get control of these shares, which are currently being held on an FTX affiliated entity. But because FTX itself is in a bankruptcy process, I think it's probably too early to speculate. Just what's going to happen. We don't have a clear idea of the outcome because Robinhood's shares that are part of this is something like 7%, I believe, of the overall outstanding Robinhood shares. That is not insignificant. It's not going to cover either the BlockFi or the FTX holes, but it is still a fairly large amount of potentially liquid assets that I imagine both bankruptcy estates are going to have an interest in.
Nick, real quickly, do you think there's any chance that BlockFi could win back trust after this? It seems like they're trying to come back, but it seems like probably a lot of trust was lost in the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, definitely a broader question. And really, if you look again, this is the third major lender to declare bankruptcy this year. Within the last, 6 months even, Celsius and Voyager both declared bankruptcy over the last couple of months. Even if BlockFi comes back, I imagine that just this idea of trust in general for crypto lenders is probably at a, if not an all-time low, near rock bottom. Yeah, just this entire, specific segment of the industry has come out and said, all right, well, we tried, and, it turns out because of whatever factors, whether that's because of, the Terra Luna collapse, whether because of FTX collapse, we were somewhat overly reliant on these other parts of the industry that collapsed, and now we're going through a bankruptcy process, and as a result, hundreds of thousands of crypto investors no longer have access to their funds. And we started seeing some of these stories already. Every time one of these happens, with Celsius, with Voyager, now with BlockFi, we're hearing stories about customers who said, okay, we thought we could trust these platforms, so we had large amounts of money, we had our life savings. And now those are, they appear to be gone, or at the very least, we're not able to access them. So, yeah, I think trust is going to be, a very scarce resource going forward.